Shariputra, the elder, seeing his children safely out of the burning house and no longer threatened, thought about his immeasurable wealth and gave each of his children a great carriage. The Tathagata does the same. He is the father of all living beings. He sees innumerable thousands of millions of beings escape from the suffering of the threefold world, from the fearful and perilous path, through the gateway of the teachings of the Buddha, and thus gain the joys of nirvana. Then the Tathagata thinks, I have Dharma storehouses of Buddhas with immeasurable unlimited wisdom, power, and freedom of fear. All these living beings are my children. I will give the great vehicle to them equally. The Buddha, wanting to restate this teaching, spoke in verse. I tell you, Shariputra, you and the others are my children, and I am your father. For repeated ages you have burned in flames of many kinds of suffering, yet I will liberate all of you and enable you to escape the threefold world. Though I previously taught that you would attain extinction, that was only freedom from birth and death, not real extinction. What you need to do now is just to acquire the wisdom of a Buddha. If there are any bodhisattvas here in this assembly, let them give full attention to hearing the true Dharma of the Buddha. The Buddhas, world-honored ones, use skillful means, and all living beings transformed by them are bodhisattvas. If there are people of little wisdom, deeply attached to clinging and desire, for their sake, the Buddha teaches the truth of suffering. Then all the living will be happy, having gained what they never had before. The truth of suffering taught by the Buddha is real and does not change. If there are living beings who do not understand the roots of suffering, who are deeply attached to causes of suffering, and are unable to give them up, even for a moment, for their sake, the Buddha uses skillful means to teach the way. The cause of all suffering is rooted in greed. If greed is extinguished, there will be no place for suffering. The elimination of all suffering is called the third truth. For the sake of this truth of elimination, you should practice the way. The escape from all bonds of suffering is called liberation. How can one become liberated? Merely leaving what is false is called liberation. But this is not yet true liberation, for it is not liberation from everything. So the Buddha says that this person has not yet achieved real extinction, because such people have not gained the unexcelled way. It is not my intent to lead them to extinction. I am the king of the Dharma, free to teach the Dharma, appearing in the world to bring peace and comfort to all the living. Shariputra, I teach this sign of the Dharma because I want to enrich the world. Do not recklessly proclaim it wherever you happen to be. If you find any who, hearing it, respond with joy and receive it with gratitude, you should know that they will never backslide. If there are any who believe and accept the Dharma of this sutra, they must have already seen Buddhas in the past, respected and made offerings to them, and heard this Dharma. If there are any who are able to believe what you preach, they must have seen me and also have seen you and these other monks as well as bodhisattvas. This Dharma Flower Sutra is taught for the sake of profound wisdom. If people of shallow understanding hear it, they will become confused and fail to comprehend it. Shariputra, if I described all the sins of those who slander this sutra, in a whole eon I would not be able to finish. For this reason, I tell you especially, do not teach this sutra to people who have no wisdom. But if there are any who are clever, understanding, and wise, learned, and of good memory, who seek the Buddha way, to such people you may teach it. If there are people who already have seen hundreds of thousands of millions of Buddhas, planted many roots of goodness, and been firmly and deeply committed To such people, you may teach it. If there are diligent people, always compassionate and never sparing of their bodies or lives, to such people, you may teach it. If there are reverent people with clearly focused minds who avoid all common foolishness and live alone among mountain streams, to such people you may teach it. What's more, Shariputra, if you see anyone who has given up bad friends and associates with good people, to such people you may teach it. If you see children of the Buddha who observe the precepts strictly, as though they were pure, bright jewels, seeking the great vehicle Sutra, to such people you may teach it. If anyone is free from anger, upright and gentle in character, always sympathetic toward everyone, and reverent toward the Buddhas, to such people you may teach it. Furthermore, if in the great assembly children of the Buddha with pure hearts use causal explanations, parables, and other kinds of expressions to preach the Dharma freely without hesitation, to such people you may preach it. I tell you, Shariputra, if I were to describe all of the kinds of seekers after the Buddha way, in a whole eon I would not be able to finish. Such people can believe and understand. For them you should teach the wonderful Dharma Flower Sutra.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham
of the Buddha, hearing that Shravakas are predicted to attain perfect enlightenment, are extremely glad in our minds, and have obtained that which we have never experienced before. Unexpectedly, we now of a sudden hear this rare law. Profoundly do we congratulate ourselves on having acquired so great and goodly a gain, an inestimable jewel, without the seeking. We on this day have heard the Buddha's voice teach, and are ecstatic with joy at having obtained the unprecedented. The Buddha declares that we Sravakas will become Buddhas. His peerless collection of treasures we have received without seeking. The sons and daughters of the Buddha, hearing the law from us, day and night ponder over and with unflagging zeal practice it. Then the Buddhas will predict of them, "You in a future generation shall become Buddhas." The mystic law of all the Buddhas can only to bodhisattvas be expounded in full reality. Our leader saw and let us alone because he looked into our minds. In his display of rarities, knowing those who delight in trifles, and by his tactfulness subduing their minds, he instructs them with the greater wisdom. Today we have obtained that which we have never had before, what we have not previously looked for. Now we have unexpectedly attained. World-honored one, now we have got the way, and got the fruit, and, in the faultless law, attained to clear vision. We, for long, having kept the Buddha's pure commandments, today for the first time obtain their fruit and reward. In the law of the law kings, having long practiced holy deeds, now we have attained to the faultless, peerless, great fruit. Now we are really hearers of the sound, who cause all beings to hear the sound of the Buddha way. The world-honored one, in his great grace, by things which are rare, has compassion for and instructs and benefits us. Through countless kotis of kalpas, who could repay him? Buddhas rarely appear with their infinite and boundless, inconceivably great transcendent powers. They are faultless and effortless, the kings of the law, who are able, for inferior minds, patiently to bide their time in this matter, and for common folk attached to externals, to preach as is befitting. Buddhas in the law attain to supreme power, knowing all living beings with their various desires and pleasures, and with their powers, so, according to their capacities, by innumerable parables, they preach the law to them. The Tathagata is the king of the law. Whatever he declares is wholly free from falsity. He expounds all the laws by wise tactfulness. The law preached by him all leads to the stage of perfect knowledge. The Tathagata sees and knows what is the good of all the laws, and also knows what all living beings in their inmost hearts are doing. He penetrates them without limits. Moreover, in regard to all laws, having the utmost understanding of them, he reveals to all living beings the wisdom of perfect knowledge. Suppose in the 3,000 great thousand-fold world there are growing on the mountains, along the rivers and streams, in the valleys, and on the land, plants, trees, thickets, forests, and medicinal herbs of various and numerous kinds, with names and colors all different. A dense cloud spreading over and everywhere, covering the whole 3,000 great thousand-fold world, pours down its rain equally at the same time. Its moisture universally fertilizes the plants, trees, thickets, forests, and medicinal herbs, and with their tiny roots, tiny stalks, tiny fruits, tiny leaves, their medium-sized roots, medium stalks, medium twigs, medium leaves, their big roots, big stalks, big twigs, big leaves. Every tree, big or little, according to its superior, middle, or lower capacity, receives its share. From the rain of the one cloud, each, according to the nature of its kind, acquires its development, opening its blossoms and bearing its fruit. Though produced in one soil and moistened by the same rain, yet these plants and trees are all different. The Tathagata is also like this. He appears in the world like the rising of that great cloud, universal Tathagata, the worshipper, the all-wise, the perfectly enlightened and confident, the well-departed, the understander of the world, the peerless leader, the controller, the teacher of gods and men, the Buddha, the world honored. Those who have not yet been saved, I cause to be saved. Those who have not yet been set free, to be set free. Those who have not yet been comforted, to be comforted. Those who have not yet obtained nirvana, to obtain nirvana. I know the present world, and the world to come, as they really are. I am the all-knowing, the all-seeing, the knower of the way, the opener of the way, the preacher of the way. Come to me, all you gods, men, and asuras, to hear the law. At that moment, numberless thousand myriad kotis of classes of living beings came to the Buddha to hear the law. Thereupon, the Tathagata, observing the natural powers of all these beings, keen or dull, zealous or indifferent, according to their capacity, preached to them the law in varying and unstinting ways, causing them all to rejoice and joyfully obtain much profit. All these living beings, having heard this law, are comforted in the present life, and afterward will be born in happy states, where they will be made joyful by the truth, and also hear the law. Having heard the law, they are freed from hindrances, and according to their capacity in all the laws, they gradually enter the way. Just as that great cloud, raining on all the plants, trees, thickets, forests, and medicinal herbs, and according to the nature of their seed, perfectly fertilizing, so that each grows and develops, so the law preached by the Tathagata is of one form and flavor, that is to say, deliverance, abandonment, extinction, and finally the attainment of perfect knowledge. If there are living beings who hear the law of the Tathagata and keep, read, recite, and practice it as preached by them, their achievements will not enable them to understand their own nature. Wherefore? Because there is only the Tathagata who knows the seed, the form, the embodiment, and the nature of all these living beings, what things they are reflecting on, what things they are thinking, what things practicing, how reflecting, how thinking, how practicing, by what laws reflecting, by what laws thinking, by what laws practicing, and by what laws attaining to what laws. There is only the Tathagata who in reality sees, clearly and without hindrance, the stages in which all living beings are, just as those plants, trees, thickets, forests, medicinal herbs, and others do not know their own natures, superior, middle, or inferior. The Tathagata knows this unitary essential, that is to say, deliverance, abandonment, extinction, final nirvana of eternal tranquility, impending and return to the world. The Buddha, knowing this, and observing the disposition of all living beings, supports and protects them. For this reason, he does not immediately declare to them the complete and perfect wisdom. All of you, a most rare thing it is that you should be able to know the law preached by the Tathagata as he sees fit, and be able to believe and able to receive it. Wherefore? Because the law preached by the Buddhas, the world-honored ones, as they see fit, is difficult to discern and difficult to know. At that time, the world-honored one, desiring to proclaim this teaching over again, spoke thus in verse. The Law King, who destroys existence, appears in this world. According to the natures of all living beings, he preaches the law discriminately. The Tathagata is greatly to be honored and profound in wisdom. For long he has kept secret this essential truth, not endeavoring hastily to declare it. The wise, if they hear it, are able to believe and discern. The ignorant doubt and turn away, losing it perpetually. Therefore, according to their powers, I preach to them, with varied reasonings, to bring them to right views. It is like a great cloud rising above the world, covering all things everywhere, a beneficent cloud full of moisture. Flashes of lightning shine and glint. The voice of thunder vibrates afar, bringing gladness and ease to all. The sun's rays are veiled, and the earth is cool. The cloud lowers and spreads as if it might be caught and gathered. Its rain everywhere equally descends on all sides, streaming, pouring without stint, enriching all the land. On mountains, by rivers, in steep valleys, in hidden recesses, there grow the plants, trees and herbs. Trees, big or small, the shoots of all the ripening grain, sugar cane and grapevine, all these by the rain are fertilized and abundantly enriched. The dry ground is all soaked, and herbs and trees flourish together. From the one water which issued from that cloud, plants, trees, thickets, forests, according to their need, receive moisture. All the trees, superior, middle, inferior, all, each according to its size, grow and develop roots, stalks, branches and leaves, blossoms and fruits, brilliant colors. By the pouring of the one rain, all become fresh and glossy. Just as their bodies, forms, and natures are divided into great and small, so the enriching rain, though one and the same, yet each flourish. In the same manner, the Buddha also appears in the world, like a great cloud, universally covering all things. And having appeared in the world, he, for the sake of all living beings, discriminates and proclaims the reality of all the laws. The great holy world-honored one, among the gods and men and all the other beings, proclaims this, saying, I am the Tathagata, the most honored among men. I appear in the world, just like a great cloud, to pour enrichment on all parched living beings, to free them from all misery, and so attain joy and peace, joy in the world, and the joy of God. With all your mind hearken to me. Come all of you here, and behold my fearless honor. I am the world who cannot be equal. To give peace to all creatures, I appear in the world, and for the hosts of the living, preach the law, pure as sweet dew. The one and only law of emancipation and nirvana. With one transcendent voice I proclaim this name, constantly taking the great veil as my subject. I look upon all living beings everywhere with equal eyes, without distinction of persons, or mind of love or hate. I have no predilections, nor limitations or partiality. Ever to all beings, I preach the law equally. As I preach to one person, so I preach to all. Constantly I proclaim the law, never occupied with aught else. Going or coming, sitting or standing, I never weary of pouring it abundantly upon the world. Like the rain enriching universally, honored and humble, high and low, law-keepers and law-breakers, those of perfect character and those of imperfect, orthodox and heterodox, quick-witted and dull-witted. With equal mind I reign the reign of the law unwearyingly. All living creatures, on hearing my law, according to their receptive powers, find their abode in their several places. Buddha, by this parable, tactfully reveals and with various expressions proclaims the one law. But of the Buddha wisdom, it is as a drop in the ocean. I rain down the rain of the law, filling the whole world, the one essential law to be practiced according to the just as those thickets, herbs and trees, according to their size, luxuriantly develop. The law of all Buddhas, ever by its essential oneness, causes all the worlds universally to gain perfect wheel. Gradually, by its observance, all attain the ways of fruition. By numerous reasonings and various parables, I reveal the Buddha way. This is my tactful method. All Buddhas do the same. What I have now said to you all is the veriest truth. The way in which you want is the Bodhisattva way. By gradually practicing and learning, all of you will become Buddhas. Assurance of becoming a Buddha. At that time, the world-honored one spoke in verse. In my Buddha eyes I see that in future life, after innumerable eons, this Kashyapa will be able to become a Buddha. In future lives, he will go before and make offerings to 3 million billion world-honored Buddhas. For the sake of Buddha wisdom, he will observe noble practices carefully and make offerings to the highest and most honored of people. Having studied and put into practice all the unexcelled wisdom, in his final incarnation, he will be able to become a Buddha. His land will be pure, with lapis lazuli for ground. Many jeweled trees will line the roadsides, with golden cords marking off the roads. Those seeing it will rejoice. It will always be fragrant, with rare flowers scattered everywhere. And many kinds of rare, wonderful things will add to its splendor. The land will be level and smooth, without hills or holes. The many bodhisattvas will be countless in number. They will have gentle dispositions, attain the great divine faculties, and honor and embrace the Buddha's great vehicle sutras. You multitude of monks, I have something to tell you now. Give your full attention to what I have to say. My great disciple Subhuti will become a Buddha, whose name will be famous features. He will make offerings to innumerable trillions of Buddhas, and, following the practices of the Buddhas, gradually fulfill the great way. In his final incarnation, he will acquire the 32 characteristics and be as imposing and wonderful as a mountain of jewels. His Buddha land will be unsurpassed in purity and splendor, so that all who behold it will cherish and delight in it. In its midst, the Buddha will liberate innumerable beings. Following his Buddha Dharma will be many bodhisattvas. All of them will have keen faculties and turn the irreversible wheel. His land will always be adorned with bodhisattvas. The Dharma preached by that Buddha will be revealed through innumerable divine transformations beyond conception. You multitude of monks, give me your complete attention. In what I teach there is nothing that is not true. This Katyayana will give various kinds of excellent things as offerings to Buddhas. After Buddhas have passed into extinction, he will put up stupas of the 7 precious materials and give flowers and incense as offerings to their remains. In his final incarnation, he will acquire the wisdom of the Buddha and reach impartial, proper awakening. His land will be pure and clean. He will save innumerable trillions of living beings. And from all the living beings of the 10 directions, he will receive offerings. The radiance of this Buddha, none will be able to surpass. His Buddha name will be Jambunada Golden Light. Numberless, uncountable bodhisattvas and travakas, rejecting all ideas of being, will adorn his land. Then the world-honored one once again addressed the great assembly. This, my disciple, the great Mahamaglayaya, after casting off this body, will see 8,002 million billion world-honored Buddhas. For the sake of the Buddha way, he will make offerings to them and revere them. Where these Buddhas are, he will always observe noble practices, and for innumerable eons embrace the Buddha Dharma. After those Buddhas have passed into extinction, he will put up stupas of the 7 precious materials, with golden spires visible from afar, and with flowers, incense, and music, he will make offerings to the stupas of the Buddhas. Having gradually fulfilled the Bodhisattva way in the land called mind-pleasing, he will be able to become a Buddha named Tamalapatra Sandalwood Fragrance. The lifetime of that Buddha will be 24 eons. For the sake of human and heavenly beings, he will always preach the Buddha way. You, my disciples, with full dignity and virtue, 500 in number, will all receive assurance of becoming Buddhas in the future. About the causes and conditions of previous lives, mine and yours, I am about to speak. Listen carefully. The parable of the fantastic castle city. The Buddha said to the monks, once in the past, innumerable, unlimited, inconceivable, and countless eons ago, there was a Buddha named Excellent in Great Penetrating Wisdom Tathagata, one worthy of offerings, truly awakened, fully clear in conduct, well gone, understanding the world, unexcelled leader, trainer of men, teacher of heavenly beings and people, Buddha, world-honored one. His land was named Well-Made, and his eon was named Great Features. Monks, since that Buddha passed into extinction, a long, long time has passed. Suppose, for instance, that someone took all of the earth in a 3,000 great thousandfold world and ground it into ink powder, and then passed through 1,000 lands to the east, dropping one speck as large as a speck of dust, and again passing through another 1,000 lands, dropping just one speck. Suppose he proceeded in this way until he had exhausted all the ink made of that earth. What do you think? All these lands, is it possible even for mathematicians or their disciples to count all of them and know the number of all the lands visited? No, it is not, world-honored one. Monks, by the power of the Tathagata's insight, I observe that distant time as if it were today. That Buddha, before he had left home, had 16 sons, the first of whom was named Accumulated Wisdom. Each of his sons had various kinds of rare and attractive toys. But when they heard that their father had attained supreme awakening, they threw away the things they had valued so much and went to pay their regards to the Buddha. Then all these 16 princes, having praised the Buddha in verse, pleaded with the world-honored one to turn the Dharma wheel, saying together, World-honored one, preach the Dharma, sympathizing with human and heavenly beings, and bringing them great comfort and abundant benefits. Then the kings of the Brahma heavens, with one mind and voice, spoke in verse, saying, Hero of the world, most honored of people, we beg you to proclaim the Dharma. By the power of your great compassion, saving living beings from their suffering and agony. Then the excellent, in great penetrating wisdom Tathagata silently consented. He said, "This is suffering. This is the cause of suffering. This is the elimination of suffering. This is the way to the elimination of suffering." Then he taught the 12 causes and conditions, namely, ignorance causes actions, actions cause consciousness, consciousness causes name and form, name and form cause the 6 kinds of sense, the 6 kinds of sense cause contact, contact causes sensations, sensations cause desires, desires cause attachments, attachments cause existence, existence causes birth, birth causes old age and death, anxiety and sorrow, suffering and anguish. If ignorance is extinguished, then action is extinguished. If action is extinguished, then consciousness is extinguished. If consciousness is extinguished, then name and form are extinguished. If name and form are extinguished, then the 6 kinds of senses are extinguished. If the 6 senses are extinguished, then contact is extinguished. If contact is extinguished, then sensation is extinguished. If sensation is extinguished, then desire is extinguished. And if desire is extinguished, then attachments are extinguished. If attachments are extinguished, then existence is extinguished. If existence is extinguished, then birth is extinguished. And if birth is extinguished, then old age and death, anxiety and sorrow, suffering and anguish are extinguished. When the Buddha taught this Dharma in the midst of the great assembly of human and heavenly beings, 6 million billion myriads of people, because they refused to become attached to anything and freed themselves from fault, obtained profound and wonderful meditation, the 3 kinds of knowledge, the 6 divine powers, and the 8 kinds of liberation. Likewise, when the Buddha preached the Dharma for a second, a third, and a 4th time, tens of millions of billions of myriads of living beings, as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, because they also refused to become attached to anything, were able to free themselves from faults. From this time on, the number of Shravakas was innumerable and unlimited, beyond calculation. Meanwhile, the 16 princes left their home while still young and became novices. Their senses were sharp, and their wisdom bright. They had already made offerings to hundreds of thousands of billions of Buddhas, had observed noble practices in purity, and sought supreme awakening. Together, they said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, all of these innumerable tens of millions of billions of great virtuous Shravakas are already accomplished. World-honored one, now you should preach the Dharma of supreme awakening for our sake. Once we have heard it, we will study and practice it together." World-honored one, we are determined to gain the insight of a Tathagata. What is deep in our hearts, the Buddha must already know. Then the 8 trillion people in the assembly, led by the wheel-turning saintly king, seeing that the 16 princes had left their home to become novices, wanted to do the same. Hearing this, the king permitted them to do so. Then that Buddha, responding to the pleas of the novices after 20,000 eons had passed, in the presence of the 4 groups, preached this great vehicle sutra named the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma, the Dharma by which bodhisattvas are taught, and which Buddhas watch over and keep in mind. When he had preached this sutra, the 16 novices, for the sake of supreme awakening, all received and embraced it, learned and recited it, and deeply understood it. While this sutra was preached, The 16 Bodhisattva novices all accepted it in faith. The Buddha preached this sutra for 8,000 eons without resting. When he had finished preaching it, he entered a quiet room and meditated for 84,000 eons. Then the 16 Bodhisattva novices, knowing that the Buddha had entered the room and was meditating quietly, each got on a Dharma seat and for 84,000 eons taught and explained the wonderful Dharma Flower Sutra everywhere to the 4 groups. In this way, each of them saved 6 million billion myriads of human beings, as many as the sands of the Ganges, demonstrating and teaching it to them, enriching them and giving them joy, and leading them to aspire to supreme awakening. After 84,000 eons had passed, excellent and great penetrating wisdom Buddha arose from his meditation, went up to the Dharma seat, and quietly sat down. Addressing the whole great assembly, he said, "Such bodhisattva novices as these 16 are very rare. Their faculties are keen and their wisdom bright. They have made offerings to innumerable tens of millions of billions of Buddhas. Under those Buddhas, they have always observed noble practices, received and embraced Buddha wisdom, and opened it up for living beings, leading them to enter into it. Monks, I tell you now that these disciples of the Buddha, the 16 novices, have all attained supreme awakening. In all the lands, in every direction, at the present time, they preach the Dharma and have innumerable hundreds of thousands of billions of bodhisattvas and shravakas as their followers. 2 of those novices became Buddhas in the eastern region. One is named Akshobhya and lives in the land of joy. The other is named Sumeru Peak. 2 are Buddhas in the southeastern region. One named Lion's Voice, the other Lion's Character. 2 Buddhas are in the southern region, one named Space Dweller, the other Ever Extinguished. One of the 2 Buddhas in the southwestern region is named Imperial Character, the other Brahma Character. One of the 2 Buddhas in the western region is named Amida, the other Saving All Worlds from Suffering. Of the 2 Buddhas in the northwestern region, one is named Tamalapatra, Spiritually Powerful Sandal Fragrance, the other Sumeru Form. Of the 2 Buddhas in the northern region, one is named Cloud Freedom and the other Cloud Freedom King.